Chapter 36, The Visit. The next day, Saturday, when Phoebe and I reached the bus stop, Ben was standing there. "Oh, crud," Phoebe muttered. "Are you waiting for this bus? Are you going to Chanting Falls?" "Yup," he said. "To the university?" "Nope." Ben pushed his hair from his eyes. "There's a hospital there. I'm going to go see someone." "So you're taking this bus?" Phoebe said. "Yes, Freebie, I'm taking this bus. Do you mind?" The three of us sat on the long bench at the back of the bus. I was between Phoebe and Ben, his arm pressed up against mine. Phoebe said we were visiting an old friend at the university. Each time we rounded a curve, I leaned against Ben or he leaned against me. "Sorry," he said. "Sorry," I'd say. At Chanting Falls, we stood on the pavement as the bus roared off. "The university's over there," Ben pointed down the road. "See ya." And he walked off in the other direction. "Oh, gosh," Phoebe said. Why did Ben have to be on the same bus? It made me very nervous. It made me nervous too, but for different reasons. Every time I was with him now, my skin tickled and my brain buzzed and my blood romped around as if it were percolating. The address we had for Mike Bickle was a freshman dormitory. It had a 3-story brick building, hundreds of windows. "Oh no," Phoebe wailed. "I thought it might be a little house or something." Students were coming in and out of the building and walking across the lawn. Some were sitting on the grass or benches studying. In the lobby was a reception desk with a handsome young man standing behind it. "You do it," Phoebe said. "I just can't." We stood out like pickles in a pea patch. There were all these grown-up college students, and here we were, 2 puny 13-year-old girls. Phoebe said, "I wish I'd worn something else," and she picked the lint off her sweater. I explained to the man at the desk that I was looking for my cousin Mike Bickle. The young man smiled wide. White teeth smiled at me. He checked the roster and said, "You're in the right place, room 209. You can go on up." Phoebe nearly choked. "You mean we can go right up to his room?" "Sure," said the young man. "Through there," he gestured. We walked through the swinging doors. Phoebe said, "Really, I'm having a heart attack. I know it. I just can't do this. Let's get out of here." At the end of the hall, we slipped out the exit. What if we knocked on his door and he opened it and he pulled us inside and he slit our throats? Students were milling around on the lawn. I looked for an empty bench on which I might sit. On the far side of the lawn, I saw the backs of 2 people, a young man and an older woman. They were holding hands. She turned and kissed him on the cheek. "Phoebe?" On the bench was Phoebe's mother, and she was kissing the lunatic. Chapter 37, A Kiss. Phoebe was stunned and angry, but she was braver than I was. She could watch, but I could not. I assumed that Phoebe would follow me, but I didn't look back. Down the street I tore, trying to remember where the bus stop was. It wasn't until I saw the hospital that I realized I must have missed the bus stop. I ducked inside and was surprised that Phoebe was not behind me. What I did next was an impulse, a hunch. I asked the hospital receptionist if I could see Mrs. Finney. She flipped through the roster. "Are you a family member?" she said. "No." "I'm afraid you can't go up then. Mrs. Finney is on the psychiatric ward, family only." "I was looking for her son. He came here to visit her. Maybe they went outside. You could look out back." Behind the hospital was a wide sloping lawn, bordered by flower gardens. Scattered across the lawn were benches and chairs, most of them occupied with patients and their visitors. It was a scene much like the one I just left at the university, except no one here was studying, and some of the people wore dressing gowns. Ben was sitting crisscrossed, legged on the ground in front of a woman in a pink robe. She fidgeted with a sash. Ben saw me and stood up as I crossed the lawn. "This is my mother," he said. I said hello, but she didn't look at me. Instead, she stood, and she drifted off across the lawn as if we were not there, and I followed. She reminded me so much of my mother after she returned from the hospital. My mother would stop right in the middle of doing something inside the house and walk out the door. Halfway up the hill, she'd sit down to catch her breath. She'd pick at the grass, get up again, and went a little farther. Sometimes my mother went in the barn and filled the pail with chicken feed, but before she reached the chicken coop, she set the pail down and moved off in another direction. When she could walk farther, my mother rambled over fields and meadows in a weaving, snaking pattern as if she could not make up her mind which way to turn. We followed Ben's mother back and forth across the lawn, but she never seemed to notice our presence. At last I said I had to go, and that's what had happened. For one quick moment, we both had the same agenda. I looked at him, and he looked at me. Both our heads moved forward. It must have been in slow motion because I had a split second where he reminded me of Mr. Berkway's drawing of the two heads facing each other with the vase between us. I wondered just for an instant if a vase could fit between us. If there had been a vase, we would have squashed it because our heads moved completely together and our lips landed in the right place, which was on the other person's lips. It was a real kiss, and it did not taste like chicken. And then our heads moved slowly backwards, and we stared across the lawn, and I felt like a newly born horse who knows nothing but feels everything. Ben touched his lips. "Did it taste a little bit like blackberries to you?" he said.